everything was fine. At least, I thought so. That morning, everything seemed slow and safe, like the silence inside a snow globe before someone decides to shake it. The kids were still asleep upstairs. Our golden retriever, Sammy, was curled up by the sliding glass door, wagging his tail as if chasing some doggy dream. The sky outside the window was tinged with orange through the pine trees. And Marcy, my wife of 18 years, was humming to herself in the kitchen, dancing barefoot as if she were alone in some indie film about finding joy. It was supposed to be a perfect morning. She was dancing in one of my old t-shirts, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and she was flipping pancakes with a youthful energy I hadn't seen in her in a long time. I stood there watching her, sipping my now warm coffee, wondering what I had done to deserve this paradise and this high. Every marriage goes through different phases, right? And after a long winter of missed signals, busy schedules, and tired love, this felt like spring. She turned and smiled at me. "You're watching," she said, smiling. "I have a right to watch my wife," I replied. Her eyes lingered on mine for a second too long. The smile blossomed, but something flickered behind it as if she wanted to say something else but swallowed it. Silence enveloped us. Not uncomfortable, but complete. And then she broke it. "You know what we should do?" she asked, suddenly brightening. "Go to one of those adult toy stores. You know, do something weird. Just for fun." I choked on my coffee a little. "What, right now?" "Come on," she laughed, waving her spatula like a magic wand. "It could be fun. Or amazing. Or both." Marcy wasn't a prude, but she wasn't that either. Spontaneity wasn't her thing, at least not since the kids were born, since we became the couple on the calendar who always planned our entertainment between orthodontist appointments and Amazon returns. Still, I played along. "What exactly are we going to look for in this hypothetical romantic toy store?" "Oh, I don't know. I just want to try something new," she said, lowering her eyes. She kissed me on the cheek, poured coffee into my half-empty cup, and went back to her pancakes. But something about the way she said it didn't seem like a joke. It was like testing a boundary. Like lighting a match near a gas stove to see if it was still burning. Later that evening, she snuggled up to me on the couch, her body warm and restless. We watched some show that neither of us liked, but halfway through, she took my hand and held it. Our fingers intertwined. Just like we used to do when we were dating. I squeezed her hand, feeling a silly sense of gratitude. "You've been so sweet lately," I told her. She didn't answer. She just smiled again and snuggled up to my shoulder. And yet, the way she held me was tender, but it felt like goodbye. Like someone remembering old feelings without committing to the future. That night, she fell asleep first, breathing quietly next to me, hugging my leg like she used to. I lay there longer than I wanted to, staring at the ceiling and counting the blades of the fan as if they were answers to questions I hadn't yet formulated. It wasn't because of what she said. Not really. It was the space between her words that began to feel dangerous. But I didn't do anything. Not yet. I didn't know it, but I had just witnessed the last morning I would be able to look at my wife without suspicion. The last coffee she poured into my cup without breaking it. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. There are moments in life when reality doesn't hit you all at once, but seeps in. Quietly, like a leak behind drywall. You don't see the damage until the rot has set in. It all started on Tuesday evening. Marcy went to bed early, which was unusual for her lately. She claimed that her new hormonal rhythm was causing waves of sleepiness. But something was bothering me. It felt like the feeling you get before a toothache turns into an infection. I walked past her laptop, which was glowing on the kitchen table. The screen was dim, but it was still breathing. She always closed it when she finished working. Always. Like a habit or a secret. We didn't have passwords. Not since 2009, when we made a deal after a short, stupid argument about whether hiding is lying. That night, I broke the unspoken rule. It took 5 seconds. I opened the laptop. I clicked on messages. 10 seconds later, I was no longer the man I thought I was. Nor was I the man she allowed me to believe I could still be. "Marcy, I think I'm ruining everything." "Mia," her sister, then stop. "You can't do this. You love him." "Marcy, I loved him. I don't know what I feel now. All I know is that I'm living with Daniel. Daniel. Her co-worker. The one she said was weird and ugly. Now he was attractive and funny and made her feel noticed. I read the message twice. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I couldn't. I couldn't connect the woman in those messages with the woman who kissed me on the forehead this morning before making lunch for the kids. But those were her words. I know her mistakes. The way she overuses ellipses when she's emotional. And, God help me, she was emotional. Marcy, maybe it's just hormones. Or maybe it's revenge. Marcy, he cheated on me 15 years ago. I forgave him. But I never forgot. There it was. I stood there, my hand on the tabletop, my breath stuck somewhere between my lungs in disbelief. She was digging up the grave I thought we had buried together. My mistake was in the singular, not the plural. One drunken night at a friend's wedding 15 years ago. The next day, I told her everything. I cried. She cried even harder. Then we started all over again, brick by brick. But apparently, she kept the chisel. Funny, I was always afraid that someone new would seduce her. Someone younger. Richer. More handsome. But it turned out that all she needed was an old grudge and a week without her medication. I sat on the couch with her phone in my hand, staring at the floor as if she owed me an explanation. And somewhere between that and the clock striking 2 in the morning, I realized something so bitter that it was almost funny. I hadn't been married for 18 years. I had been on parole for 18 years. Sure, she smiled, laughed, played the role of wife like a pro. But underneath it all was a book, and she kept track of everything. Turns out, I was paying interest on a debt I thought I had already paid off. You know you've got a problem when your wife starts acting like one of those clients at your job who demands a refund for a toaster she bought in 2007. I'm sorry, ma'am, but our store policy does not allow returns for long-term dissatisfaction. I looked at her sleeping on the couch. One hand covered her eyes, as if she couldn't look at herself. Then a wave washed over me, not anger, not yet. Just a quiet, soul-wrenching sadness. I realized that I loved her sincerely, and she loved me conditionally. There was a moment, maybe 5 seconds, when I reached out to brush a strand of hair from her forehead. I have it, I guess. The muscle memory of a man who still considered himself married. But I stopped. Because you can't tuck in someone who's already halfway out the door. She stirred, muttered something, probably in her sleep. Or rehearsing. Who knows? I turned away. The next morning, she acted as usual. She kissed me on the cheek. She made coffee. She talked about enrolling the kids in art camp, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. While I was in the shower, she deleted all her messages with Mia. When I checked her phone again, it was gone. Disappeared. As if it had never been there. But I saw it. Every word. Every sigh. Every plan. She could delete the evidence, but she couldn't delete the pain, and she certainly couldn't delete the truth that I already know about her, the truth that is, of course, very ugly. The thing about betrayal, it doesn't shout. It whispers. It unspools slowly, like a loose thread from the inside of your life until you realize the whole damn sweater's coming apart. After that night, I couldn't look at Marcy the same. Her laugh became suspect. Her kindness, performative. Her phone, a ticking bomb. I didn't say anything. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But how do you confront a betrayal that hasn't technically happened yet? How do you fight a war she hasn't declared? So I played my part. We had dinner like usual. We made small talk. I even cracked a few jokes about Sammy the dog shedding like a snowstorm. She laughed a little too easily, as if relief leaked out between her ribs every time I acted normal. But my eyes were no longer on her. They were on her phone. I started watching patterns. She'd turn its screen down now. She never used to. She took it with her into the bathroom. She'd smile when it buzzed and then pretend it was spam. It wasn't. I knew it. Because I had synced her cloud to an old iPad in my office 2 years ago to help her back up photos of the kids. She never changed the password. I dug into it like a starving man looking for bread. And there it was. Deleted texts. Scrubbed clean. But not from the iPad. The cloud held memories longer than she did. Marcy saw him in the copy room again. He leaned in and whispered something dirty. God help me, I liked it. Mia, Marcy. You said you weren't going to entertain this anymore. Marcy, I'm not. Not seriously. I'm just letting him orbit. Letting him orbit. That line stuck with me. As if he was a moon, and she was the planet. Meanwhile, I was what? A satellite dish? The next day, she floated through the house with the kind of buoyancy I hadn't seen in years. She hummed while folding laundry. She danced a little while unloading groceries. This is what women in love look like. Except it wasn't with me. That realization made my teeth ache. I found myself doing things I never thought I would. Checking phone logs. Watching her movements on the synced GPS. I justified it at first. I need to know. But the truth? I didn't want to know. Not really. Because what do you do when you're the good guy who's turning into the villain in your own story? One night, around 3 a.m., I crept into the living room where she'd left her phone charging. She was upstairs sleeping, or pretending to. I picked it up, hands shaking like I was defusing a bomb. That's when the real gut punch came. A message from her sister, timestamped at 1:17 a.m. Are you sober now? Do you still feel the same? No reply yet. Just read. I waited. I actually sat there for 20 minutes staring at that glowing screen, wondering if this was my cue to break the silence. But then I heard the floor creak upstairs. Marcy was coming down. I panicked and set the phone back exactly how it was, like a thief ashamed of what he took. She padded into the room in her robe, bleary-eyed. What are you doing up? Couldn't sleep, I lied. You okay? Just had too much coffee, I said. She came over and wrapped her arms around me. Her cheek against my back. I felt her warmth. Her breath. Her heartbeat. And all I could think was, don't trust it. Don't trust her. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stared at the ceiling thinking about the word orbit again. About how love, real love, isn't supposed to orbit anyone. It's supposed to land. Anchor. Stay. But she was somewhere else already, floating. Spinning. Not with me. The next day I tried to bring it up without bringing it up. You ever think about the past much? I asked her over breakfast. She glanced up from her cereal. What do you mean? I don't know. Mistakes. Choices. Regrets. She hesitated, spoon halfway to her lips. Sometimes, yeah. Why? No reason. Just curious. She nodded and went back to her bowl like I hadn't just handed her the blueprint of my emotional wreckage. It was then I realized something both tragic and darkly hilarious. We were married like two diplomats from hostile nations. Smiling over breakfast. Plotting in private. I was holding on to a marriage like a man hanging from a rope that's already snapped. All I could think was, this is how it begins. Not with a scream. With cereal and silence. The universe has a hell of a sense of humor. Just when I thought the cracks in my marriage couldn't widen without something falling through them, the doorbell rang. It was a Thursday morning. I was still in my robe, coffee half full, and nerves even less so. Marcy was upstairs finishing a Zoom call for work. The kids had already been dropped at school. The house was unusually quiet until the doorbell screamed like a warning shot. I opened the door and felt my soul do a full-body eye roll. Surprise, came the high-pitched, nasal voice of none other than Aunt Carol. Marcy's godmother. The human embodiment of a Facebook comment section. 62 years old. Recently divorced for the 4th time and traveling the country on what she called her healing pilgrimage. Hope you don't mind, she chirped, dragging a leopard print suitcase the size of a small boat across our welcome mat. I was passing through on my way to Sedona. Or Santa Fe. One of the spiritual places with the red dirt. Thought I'd spend a few days reconnecting. Few days. Reconnecting. I could feel my blood pressure swelling like an airbag. Before I could form words, she was already halfway down the hall, dropping her purse on the kitchen island like she owned the deed. Oh. I see Marcy still uses almond milk. We'll have to talk about estrogen leaching later, remind me. Also, what's your Wi-Fi password again? My phone's being weird. Yeah. It's called Karma, Carol. Marcy came down the stairs, and I watched the moment her eyes registered the invasion. Her smile froze mid-step. Carol, what a surprise. I'm staying a few days. Carol squealed, hugging her with a perfume cloud that smelled like mothballs and citrus heartbreak. Marcy and I made eye contact over Carol's shoulder. We didn't say anything, but we both mouthed a silent oh no. In a weird way, it bought us a pause. With Carol in the house, there was no room for late-night whispers or soft confessions. Just loud monologues about colon cleanses and conspiracy theories involving sunscreen. But the comedy came with strings. Carol was nosy in the way archaeologists are patient, digging slowly, deeply, until something ancient and painful turned up. So, she said that evening, sipping decaf tea with both hands like a fortune teller, how's your marriage? I choked on a piece of roasted chicken. Marcy laughed too hard. Good. Fine. We're, you know. You seem tense, Carol observed, narrowing her eyes at me like I was a foreign object in her niece's domestic paradise. Tense? I echoed, my voice rising an octave. Carol, we live in a country where people dip raw chicken in NyQuil for TikTok views. Of course I'm tense. She didn't laugh. Just blinked. I sense something unspoken between you two. Are you communicating your desires? I swear I heard Marcy's soul leave her body. That night, Marcy curled into bed beside me, and for a moment, I thought maybe we were back in sync. Maybe Carol's obnoxious probing had distracted us both from the mess beneath. Can you believe she just showed up like that? Marcy whispered. No. But she might have saved us from something worse. Marcy turned to me. Like what? Like another conversation about almond milk and its estrogenic properties. She giggled in the dark. A real one. It sounded like it used to, free and stupid. I almost reached out to touch her hand. Almost. But then I remembered the deleted messages. The word orbit. The silence between us dressed up in sarcasm. We didn't hold hands that night. But we also didn't argue. Instead, I lay there thinking about how people talk about rock bottom like it's one point on a map. It's not. It's a landscape. And we were wandering it together, pretending it was still home. The next morning, Carol was up before both of us, reading The Power of Now in the sunroom and loudly exhaling with every sentence. I feel like this house has trapped emotional energy, she announced over scrambled eggs. I'm going to sage the kitchen later. Please do, I said. Just make sure you get under the fridge. I think that's where all our hope went. She didn't laugh. Again. But Marcy did. And for just a second, I saw a flicker of the girl I married. There's a kind of gallows humor that comes from realizing your marriage is dying, and the only witness is a woman who believes crystals can cure taxes. Still, Carol's visit was like a fire drill during an arson. It didn't stop the blaze. But it gave me time to check where all the exits were. The quiet that followed her departure was almost louder than her presence. And when she hugged Marcy goodbye, she whispered something I wasn't meant to hear. Remember who you are. Not just someone's wife. And then she looked right at me. I smiled. Polite. Numb. Suspicious. Because I wasn't just someone's husband anymore. I was a man preparing for war. It turns out that betrayal doesn't knock. It sneaks in through the back door, takes off its shoes, and falls asleep in your bed while you're still in it. It happened on Wednesday. A normal, stupid Wednesday. Not on an anniversary. Not on a birthday. Just a day that flies by on the calendar like fluff through your fingers. Marcy left her laptop open again, maybe she forgot, or maybe she was checking up on me. Either way, this time I didn't hesitate. No moral qualms. No doubts. I walked in like a man walking into a burning building, fully aware that it would hurt, but needing to see the flames with my own eyes. And there it was. An unsent draft letter to her sister Mia. It finally happened. I kissed him. God, Mia. I didn't want to, but it was like something I forgot I could feel. And I didn't stop. She didn't stop. She didn't even hesitate to write it down. It was like a confession. Or worse, a trophy. I stood there in my socks, staring at the words, trying to breathe despite the rage blossoming in my throat. I felt like one of those guys on TV who slowly close their laptop and walk out into the rain. Except I wasn't on TV. I was in my kitchen. The dog was sniffing my ankle. The washing machine alarm went off. The coffee maker beeped. And my marriage? It was just over. That night, I waited for the kids to fall asleep. Marcy folded towels on the couch as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't kissed another man while we were paying off the mortgage together. I sat down, elbows on my knees, fingers intertwined. We need to talk. Her hands froze in midair. Okay. You kissed him. Her face cracked like porcelain. 1 heartbeat. 2. Then she said too calmly, "What are you talking about?" I read the email, Marcy. The one you wrote to Mia. You kissed him. She blinked. Once. Then twice. And I saw it right there. That momentary flash of guilt that always comes too late to be useful. I wasn't going to send it, she said, her voice already climbing the stairs of justification. I was just writing. I needed to think it through. You thought it with your lips, Marcy. Silence. And then the dam broke. Don't do this, she blurted out. Don't pretend you're some innocent observer. You betrayed me 15 years ago, remember? I forgave you. I built a life with you. And for what? To be a supporting character in your routine? Routine? I snapped. You mean stability? Reliability? God forbid a man should love his wife without having to introduce dramatic twists into their lives every 6 months. Come on, she said, standing up. You've been emotionally dead for years. I make a little effort to feel something again, and suddenly I'm the villain? I laughed, sharply and bitterly. You kissed another man, Marcy. That's not an effort. That's betrayal with mint candies. We stood there, breathing anger at each other. The room seemed smaller. More cramped. As if the walls were leaning in to listen. Do you still love me? I asked, more quietly. She looked away. I don't know. And just like that, the floor fell away. I've faced harsh truths in my life. Once, I spent 2 weeks thinking I had kidney failure because that was the diagnosis I found online. Once, I accidentally bought a car at auction without noticing it had no engine. But nothing compares to the weight you feel when you hear your wife say "I don't know" in response to the question of whether she still loves you. Self-pity crept in like a draft. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. Because the next moment I was listing all my faults, like a man trying to preempt ridicule. I work too much. I hate crowds. For me, a romantic evening is eating leftovers in silence. Once I gave you a vacuum cleaner for your birthday and called it a status upgrade. I get it. I'm not interesting. She sighed. It's not about being interesting. It's about not feeling seen. You always say you love me, but you don't look at me anymore, you don't do little things for me, you rarely give me flowers or gifts. Maybe I stopped looking because I was afraid of what I would see. Boom. That was the moment. The big, ugly moment when we both realized that we weren't victims of each other, we were just cowards. Two people who were afraid to say what they wanted until it was too late. She started crying. Real tears. And I hated that part of me that felt nothing as I watched them roll down her cheeks. I went upstairs. I slept on the guest bed. I listened to the dog whimpering behind the door, not knowing which one of us to run to. And somewhere around 3 in the morning, I laughed. Loudly. Not because it was funny. But because I realized that I had become the very man I used to pity, a man who thought he was living in a romantic story with the joys of freedom and a loved one who would never leave me, but was actually on the verge of divorce. I didn't see her the next morning. Not because she left. She was still there. I heard her humming softly in the kitchen, making toast like she hadn't lit a match to our life the night before. That's the part that stuck in my teeth. I came down an hour later, moving like a man testing floorboards in a condemned building. She was sitting at the table, robe tied too neatly, sipping her tea like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. "Morning," she said. "Sure," I replied. "Let's call it that." She tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, and said nothing. Silence can be louder than a slap when two people know the same secret. I poured coffee. "You want eggs?" she asked. "Do you?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "I don't know," I shrugged. "Do you want to share breakfast with your husband or send him an email about it later?" She froze. Blinked once. Twice. "That's cute. I'm hilarious when I'm betrayed." She sat back, crossing her arms. "You're not betrayed, you're exposed. That's what's really burning you, isn't it? You don't hate what I did, you hate that I did it first." "Wrong," I said, leaning in. "I hate that I finally forgave myself for what I did 15 years ago. I built a life around that forgiveness. And now you just threw it back in my face like a frisbee." Silence again. Then she said, almost smiling, "You always were good with words. Too bad you didn't use them when I was begging for attention." I slammed my mug down, not hard, but loud enough to make the dog leave the room. "You wanted attention? You could have said something that didn't involve Daniel the discount Adonis. His name is irrelevant. His name could be Google Translate for all I care. He doesn't speak my language." She laughed then. Really laughed. "God, you're such a stubborn, charming bastard. You always think you're the hero." "I used to be," I said. "At least in your eyes." We sat in that moment. That beautiful, toxic, too honest moment where neither of us had anything left to pretend. And then, because life is cruel and timing is a drunk intern, our daughter came bounding down the stairs in pajamas and innocence. "Why are you guys staring at each other like that?" she asked. "Because mommy and daddy are finally being honest," I said. "Okay," she said, unfazed, grabbing a Pop-Tart. "Can we go to the park later?" Marcy and I exchanged a glance, one of those war truce glances. A nod that said, "We can hate each other later. Right now, we're still parents." "I'll take her," I said. Marcy exhaled like I just handed her a glass of mercy. Later that day, at the park, I watched my daughter chase pigeons like it was a competitive sport. She laughed. I laughed. And in that moment, strangely, I felt good. Not healed. Not okay. But honest. And that was something. There's joy in hitting rock bottom, you know? Once you stop falling, you realize the floor is solid. Now you can build again. From scratch. Brick by honest brick. When we got home, Marcy was in the backyard, pruning a dying plant like it hadn't been neglected for weeks. "Nice day?" she asked. I looked at her, and something inside me softened, not forgiveness, not yet. But recognition. "It was," I said. "And I've got plans." "Plans?" "Yeah. For me." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" I nodded. "Yeah. But that's for the next conversation." And I walked past her, smiling just enough to make her wonder. Because something's shifting now. Something's coming. And she knows it. The voice message arrived on Sunday afternoon. I wasn't even supposed to hear it. Marcy had left her phone charging in the bathroom and gone out into the garden. I was doing the laundry, yes, me, an emotionally detached man, sorting whites from colors, as if I were rewriting my past with a single cycle of washing, when suddenly the alarm sounded. Then again. And again. She had a new message. I didn't want to look. I wanted to leave. And I did. But then I heard her laughter from the backyard. The same carefree laughter that I once considered my own. And I pressed play. "Hi, it's me. I know we agreed to stop, but I can't stop thinking about you. I dreamed about that kiss last night. I woke up with a smile on my face, like an idiot. Tell me it's not over. Please." His voice. Daniel. He sounded younger than me. More alive. Like someone who still believes in second chances that don't require 15 years of hard work. I stood there, a sock in one hand, her phone in the other, my heart beating as if it were preparing for something worse. And then something happened that I didn't expect. I cried. Not a tear. Not a single manly drop. I sobbed. I fell to my knees right in front of the dryer and just let the tears flow. Betrayal, years, silent breakfasts, almost was, never again. I don't know how long I sat there. But when she came in, I couldn't hide my tears. She froze, saw her phone, saw my face. Oh, God. And for the first time since this mess began, she looked scared. Not of me, but of what she had done to me. I didn't answer him, she whispered. But you wanted to. She didn't argue. I stood up. Walked past her. Where are you going? She asked. I stopped at the door. To remember who I was before you broke me. And then I left. Not forever. Not yet. But far enough away. Want to know what happens next? Let me ask you this. What happens when a man who has been nothing but faithful starts choosing himself? You'll find out soon enough. I returned home 2 days later feeling so calm that it made the people around me nervous. Marcy was sitting on the couch with her legs tucked under her, watching one of those home improvement shows where broken things are made beautiful again. Irony. Everywhere. She turned down the volume. You smell like motel soap. Yeah. You know it's bad when shampoo doubles as shower gel and a way to hide your embarrassment. Silence. Then a slight, playful smile. Then she stood up. Are you leaving for good? She asked in an even tone. Marcy, I said, if I were leaving for good, I wouldn't be carrying a bag of frozen waffles and a new toothbrush. That's what people who make strategic decisions do, not dramatic ones. A few seconds passed. Do you want to talk? She asked. No, I said, sitting down. I want to listen. And I want you to try something new. Tell me the truth as if it were a sales pitch and you need to sell me something. She laughed. Easily. Tense. I kissed him twice. I thought about him 100 times more. Okay, I said. That's a good start. That's taking inventory. And I felt something, she continued. Something I haven't felt with you in years. Great, I said, forcing myself to smile. Now tell me, what didn't you feel when you looked me in the eyes every day and said nothing? She didn't answer. So I did it for her. You didn't feel guilty. Because you were waiting for me to become the villain again. But I didn't. I stayed. I stayed boring. I stayed honest. That made it worse, didn't it? You were safe, she said quietly. And you wanted danger. So here I am. Now I'm dangerous. Not because I betrayed you, but because I finally don't need your love. She blinked in surprise. Then I stood up, looked her in the eyes, and added. I'm moving into the guest room. Temporarily. Why? She asked. Because, I said, the nature of our relationship is changing. I'm bored of looking at you, so I'd rather watch football on TV and drink beer. They say that people don't drown when they fall into water, they drown when they stay there. I didn't want to be that kind of person. But for a while, I swam in memories of us, as if they were still warm and safe. It turned out that memories are just nostalgia with better lighting. The guest room was small. Cold. A double mattress and an old lamp. I joked that it was a place where dreams die. But the refrigerator was nearby, and the TV and sofa were close by, so that saved the day, and now I slept there willingly. How strange everything changes. Marcy stopped asking questions. I stopped answering. We passed each other like ghosts, quietly, politely, haunted. She cooked dinner. I washed the dishes. We continued to play our roles for the sake of the children, like bad actors in a sitcom that no one watches anymore. And inside? We were both bleeding in a language the other no longer spoke. Late at night, I sat on the edge of that narrow couch, talking to no one in particular. To the ceiling. To myself. To God, whom I had stopped writing to several years ago. Have I always been like this? I asked aloud. Did I kill the spark? Did I suffocate it with routine, security, and reliable toothpaste? Maybe so. I remembered how I used to surprise her with nighttime trips just to buy donuts. How we danced slow dances in the kitchen without music. And then, I just stopped. Because comfort is a silent killer. You think you're building a home, but sometimes you're building a mausoleum where your love quietly rots away. Marcy fell out of love with the version of me that I had also forgotten to support. And if I'm being honest, brutally, shamefully honest, I used her forgiveness all these years as a lifetime pass. She stayed, I told myself. So I'm safe. No one is safe. I built my justification on her silence. And she built her rebellion on mine. Skeletons in the closet? Oh, yes, I have a few. I made her beg for my attention with hints instead of words. I believed that just being present was the same as being there. I thought that being good enough meant being perfect. And maybe worst of all, I thought love would last just because we paid the mortgage on time. I don't know if she still loves me. I don't know if I still want her to. But I do know one thing. Tomorrow night, someone new is coming over for dinner. Not to start a war. To finally end it. There was no explosion. No screaming match. No wine glasses shattered or doors slammed in cinematic slow motion. Just a quiet dinner. Chicken marsala. Our daughter made the salad. The new woman I invited never showed up. But maybe that was the point. Sometimes what we don't do becomes the loudest decision we ever make. Marcy sat across from me, barely touching her food, eyes flickering with questions she no longer had the right to ask. And I? I smiled. Not because I won. There's no winning in war when the battlefield is your marriage. I smiled because, for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't waiting for her permission to feel alive. Here's what I've learned. You can lose everything and still find yourself. You can be the villain and the victim in your own story. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is walking away with your integrity intact. I don't hate her. That's not the lesson. I forgave her. Quietly. Not because she deserved it, but because I did. I needed to stop bleeding every time someone touched a memory. To you, who read this, who lived parts of it, who maybe felt seen in the worst way, I say this. Be brave with your heart. Speak up before silence becomes resentment. Love deeply, but never at the cost of yourself. And if you ever get lost, come back to the one person you owe the most to. You. Not the version others need. The one you forgot to nurture. I don't know what happens next. Maybe I rebuild. Maybe I roam. Maybe I write books about men like me so you don't have to be one. But I'm here. Breathing. Awake. And that's enough to begin again. Thank you very much for watching, friends. If you liked the story, please like and subscribe, it's very important to me right now. I'll be very happy if you do. New videos every day.